Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharad Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. I'm delighted to introduce our guest tonight, Tan Sri Ariff Yusof, who was the Speaker of Dewan Rakyat from July 2018 to July 2020. He previously served as a judge of the Court of Appeal and most recently authored a book chronicling his 2-year tenure as Speaker. It's titled Parliament Unexpected. Tan Sri Ariff, welcome to the show. It's good of you to join us.
Happy to be here.
So I'd like to begin our conversation. I want to point to, I think, towards the end of the book, and it gets really kind of exciting at the end of the book. And in those final chapters, you took pains to explain some of your decisions that you made at the height of the Sheraton move crisis, but also after the Sheraton move crisis. And I'm just wondering, if we were to look back at that period, what would you say are the main takeaways from that experience, and what did it reveal to you, Ariff, about the ways in which our institutions work within the context of our political culture, and what did it reveal to you about perhaps even the sources of our political dysfunction?
Yeah. I think I spent a lot of time towards the end. Some people, they say that that's a sad part of the book. The first part was all quite nice to read. I spent a bit of time in order to explain that we cannot rest merely on the supposition that once we have good institutions on paper, those institutions will work and provide for good governance and so on. The final chapter looks at the dysfunction matter. At the root of it, I believe, is the lack of the supporting cultural factor to support a robust parliamentary system. Now, I made the point there. In fact, in the afterword by Tan Sri Majid, he has also made the same point, but in stronger terms. But that is the main point which I was trying to make towards the end. And of course, for a book like this, I could not really look into the details. If someone asked me, what do you propose? It's very difficult to put it in one chapter, the details of things that could be done. That is why you mentioned just now, the takeaway line is there, that we have to do things, let's rethink this problem, and let's build the country together again, for a better future, for everyone, for all our communities. I spent a bit of time, you will notice, in the entire book, to emphasize the point that this is a multiracial country and one must expand the middle ground. There is no two ways about it. Expand the middle ground. Keep the extremists where they deserve to be, in the extremities. And that was a point I tried to make, not only in the closing chapter, but in at least 2 other chapters or 3 other chapters. Particularly the chapter in relation to the debate on ISAT and the Rome Statute. I didn't enjoy presiding the Dewan during that time because I thought things were taken right off a tangent. When racial politics dominated the day, the extremist elements went center stage. When the core issue was really a matter of international law, about Malaysia's standing internationally. I mean, there should have been a lot more discussion there, but it got hijacked for other things. So to connect all the dots together, at the end of it, I say, no, let's think this issue together. This is the cause of our dysfunction. Grabbing power and not enough attention being given to strengthening institutions. Why? Because, to me at least, we need to build on the cultural support or political culture that needs to be improved in this country. And the story is still unraveling. I thought, we would see improvements with the MOU and whatever they call it now, transformation, reformation, whatever. I don't quite like the word transformation. I made it plain in the book. I think it is still reformation, reform of the system.
Tan Sri, if I can ask you this, because Malaysians are perhaps more than ever in the last 3 or years or so, been subjected to a kind of drama, as almost on a daily basis, that has revealed the inner workings of government. I mean, I think back to the crisis in Malacca, where we all suddenly discovered something that perhaps Malaccans all knew, which was that both the chief minister, the speaker, and the governor were all from the ruling party. I mean, it was an extraordinary exposed the ways in which the principle of, say, separation of powers does not operate in Malaysia. And I wonder if you could help us through that, because the debacle that you went through in being removed also revealed the way in which the executive thinks about the role of the speaker and its function in the life of parliament.
But back to the main point I raised just now. I mean, you can take a label, parliamentary democracy, bandy it about, everyone becomes so enamored by that term, parliamentary democracy. One needs to look through further. Are we practicing real parliamentary democracy? Are there defects in the system? Obviously, there are many defects in the system, and you have mentioned one of the main defects. It's a failure to understand what it should entail. Separation of powers, checks and balances. We're getting into problems on a daily basis because of this. A failure to understand that there must be checks and balances. Politics in Malaysia is not about pursuing power purely. It is to be set against a higher ideal. If it's merely to pursue power, when there is less emphasis on the democratic element. It's all about raw politics, but it is not all about raw politics. We have the constitution. I mean, this is a system that we have adopted. So make it work. The executive cannot be so domineering to determine what happens in parliament. Nor should the speaker. I'm not saying, I'm tempted to say, nor can the speaker, but and I've made it plain in the book that the speaker's powers are quite limited. But so we're looking at the realm of the should be, or should have and should do. Because even the speaker's office has some residuary discretion. Again, I mean, if the reader reads through the book, there are instances where I have drawn the reader to the discretionary element of the speaker. But even in the worst of time, if the speaker puts his mind to it and look at the larger picture, and then do whatever is reasonable and fair in the circumstances for good public governance. So if someone asks for Parliament to convene on a special matter, I mean, there is still some discretion involved.
Right.
I've tried to defend myself in making that decision because I got roundly condemned by a lot of people. So I think I ought to put it on record in a book why I did it. But the message I want to put across to the reader and to politicians, if they care to read the book, is that you must allow the speaker some leeway to exercise his discretion, not for his own show of force or power or whatever, but for the good of the nation. He's got to think beyond the standing orders. I don't think the function of the speaker is purely to read the standing orders in the way he wants it read.
Right.
Things have a context. Things have a cultural context, a political context. And what at the end of the day is all good governance, checks and balances to ensure that there is no abuse of power and that you and I are taken care of. How best can we be taken care of except through the parliamentary process? That's why we have parliament. If something goes wrong, floods in the country, and there must be a debate. You can't say we'll have it next month. That shows a failure to understand.
Yeah. Tan Sri, that's exactly what happened. I just want to, to alert the future readers of your book that you do talk about the Sungai Kim Kim environmental disaster,
Yes.
and in your response to it. And what's been very interesting for the Malaysian public has been the standing order. I mean, there's an expression that's now perhaps can be it's come into common understanding or view. It is the idea of a standing order. But could you help us understand that? Because at one point you're saying it's a touchstone for the speaker. The standing orders are, in fact, the guidebook for the speaker. But at the same time, you're saying that something else might operate which kicks in, especially in a time of crisis. Could you help us work that out?
Yeah, and this is a standing order. Everyone knows. Very slim book. I still have my stickers there because I need to occasionally refer to it. This is not a big book. A few of us wrote that big book. Yeah, the Askin May of Malaysia, whatever. That is a big book containing the principles and the cases, the discussions, whatever, on any particular matter. But the standing order is basically a manual on meetings. That's what it is. What comes first, what comes last, what do you do when there is a motion, notice requirements or a motion, but it doesn't answer, let's say, the critical point. Let's take the very talked about point, vote of no confidence. It is not mentioned in the standing orders. Does it mean that it doesn't exist? It has been done. There's parliamentary convention. So if someone puts in a motion of no confidence, what do you do? Here again, parliamentary conventions, good behavior, good public governance, and an appreciation of the democratic process must all kick in. So the executive cannot say, no, it's by the standing order, there's no such thing. The speaker shouldn't have accepted it. It always happened in my case. I mean, it got a lot of people annoyed. But because they were so blinded by a possible loss of power that they misread the constitutional basis of this motion of no confidence, which is why I think I have touched on it in a way, on the need to amend the standing orders, all right, to tighten it, to make sure that when there is a vote of no confidence, time must be given. The government must give time for the vote of no confidence or confidence. We're not only talking about the negative, it's also a positive side. Time must be given because it's such an important matter. But politicians, of course, do not want to understand. I think most of them do understand. Right? There are many lawyers in the House. I mean, they are taught the same basic principles of constitutional law as I was. Right? I don't think anyone can say, I don't understand, or that the Malaysian system does not subscribe to this principle. So what? We are a parliamentary system based on Westminster. The entire Commonwealth accepts this convention that there should be time allotted for a vote of no confidence or confidence. But once you purposely say you don't understand or it doesn't exist, then you disrupt the workings of the system. That's one of the things I was trying to say in the book.
Okay. All right, Tan Sri Ariff, we're going to take a quick break, but let's come back and continue this conversation about the book. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to Consider This. Hi, thanks so much for staying with Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris. With me is Sharad Kutin. Let's continue our conversation with Tan Sri Ariff Yusof, who has recently published a book called Parliament Unexpected about his 2-year tenure as Speaker of Dewan Rakyat. Tan Sri, I want to talk a little bit about unfinished reforms and, changing parliamentary culture, which I think has been talked about a lot, about this, disorderly conduct within the House. And in your book, you actually pointed to reform of the committee system as, if I may quote you, a good starting point to changing parliamentary culture. And you point to the fact that because of the nature of the committee system, it brings out non-partisanship and civility. And I'm wondering whether you can help explain the unfinished reform part of the committee system and how that might actually be the impetus to change disorderly conduct within the House.
It is critical to the reform of Parliament to have a good committee system. And to have a good committee system is not to just establish the numbers necessary. Currently, they have 10 new special select committee. All right, I established 10 too. And initially, we started with 6, and then we increased after persuading the government of the day or cabinet that we need really to have 10. Right? So that is the first stage. Second stage is you must have good people in the committees. You must have good chairpersons in the committee. The committees must be robust and be managed by competent people. You know, you can't simply say, because this person is an MP, there's a track record being deputy minister in some ministry, and therefore he is good enough to head a committee. That is all wrong. Again, a point made in the book. We are so used to the idea that once a person gets elected, he is fully qualified for the job. Of course it's not. Of course it's not. So here again, the committee system becomes very, very important. So that's second stage, to make sure that we have qualified persons involved. The third stage, or they all can act in combination, consists of making sure that the rules governing the committees have bite. Pointless having committees, and then when a committee asks a person to attend before it, and then they quibble over it. Is it an invitation only? Is it a summons only? Of course. We don't speak the language of summons in the standing orders. Committees are not courts of law. But committees have the same powers as the House, the entire House. It has a delegated function. It is set up by the House. You can't simply set out, the Speaker cannot say, I'll set out a committee tomorrow, call it XYZ. No, it must be formalized through a resolution of the House, or at least reported to the House and approved. And once that's done, it has all the powers of the House. So if the committee says, Mr. So-and-so, come before the committee, you go before the committee. I mean, that is a convention. You can write a summons type letter to say, I compel you to enter upon pain of imprisonment or whatever, or a huge fine. That is not parliamentary convention or parliamentary custom. So again, we are back to this cultural issue, this political culture.
Okay, Tan Sri, on that, can I ask you, because you have in the past also dabbled in politics, you stood, for elected office, you didn't succeed, but and so you, and as a Malaysian, clearly have views about the direction of this country and where it's come from, the long tenure of Dr. Mahathir, 22 years of extreme executive dominance over all institutions in the country, right, including the judiciary, it's alleged. So I want to ask you about that. I mean, do you think that we are still very deeply feudal, deeply authoritarian, and that is the source of many of our troubles?
Yes. I mean, I would say openly, but people, others maybe just hide, wriggle out of this. This is the elephant in the room. We are a feudal society until today. That is why we have the offshoots of this feudal beliefs that someone who's elected assumes a kind of supernatural role that he or she is immediately qualified. Where does it stem from? A feudalistic notion of power. So we have to change this mindset too. Someone who's elected to high office doesn't need to be hand-kissed. Why should it be? I mean, look at other nations. It is to be, offered or whatever, or the respect is to be given as a matter of deference, that you hold this high office, and you are competent, you take care of the rakyat, and therefore we accord you our utmost respect. But if the person does not deserve it, but his qualification stems merely from the fact that he or she has been elected to office, then I think that's only half the picture, or not even the whole picture. There is an episode I mentioned in the book, then experience in Norway,
Okay.
I felt that I need to put that in to show why in Malaysia we are so lagging behind.
Well, can you just very quickly explain it? It's about the, meeting a deputy minister on the street.
Yeah, yeah. We had a meeting with this deputy minister who happens to be a lady too, very capable and able lady of the Norwegian government. So we went through this process of having a formal meeting to talk about many things. And then we adjourned, of course. We had a dinner appointment. We had a dinner appointment with the Malaysian ambassador to Norway, and so a Norwegian ambassador to Malaysia. She was also there. We were just waiting outside the hotel, to walk to the restaurant. Everyone walks in Norway anyway, so there was no, chauffeur-driven kind of a car coming out, whatever. We all walked. And Dr. Rosmi, the secretary of the house then, was with me and Nga Koming, waiting outside the hotel in the freezing cold. It was snowing quite heavily then. Maybe not at that time. And someone tapped Dr. Rosmi on the shoulder. And she was surprised. And so was I. It was the deputy minister, the very senior deputy minister, not just an ordinary deputy minister, deputy minister of a very senior ministry. She was walking alone, unattended, carrying her bag, walking very fast, as Europeans do, and in London or wherever you go, and they walk top, right? But she stopped, tapped, Dr. Rosmi on the shoulder, said hello, and there you are, a minister without all the fanfare, going home as an ordinary person would, walking to the train station to take the train back to her house. Imagine in Malaysia, I put in the line there, can we expect this to happen in Malaysia? Maybe ... not. That's the message. Maybe not.
Right.
Yeah. Why should it be not the case in Malaysia? Shouldn't we change our mindset? What's wrong with taking a train home?
That's right.
What's wrong with not having, your sirens and, I don't know, motorcades or whatever?
Understood. The egalitarian nature was what you were pointing to. Can I very quickly, in the couple minutes that we have left, come back to the point of the book, which is to correct the course that we're on when it comes to the parliament. And I'm just wondering, Tan Sri, where you kind of see the direction of Malaysian democracy heading and the role of the speaker in that direction, because when we think about the nature of public confidence and the trust deficit, what happens when the public loses its trust in the Speaker of the Dewan Rakyat? What are the consequences of that?
Of course, you got to get people who are qualified for the job and who are on the same wavelength as many others who think that the country must improve. And we aim for a better country, and there's no reason why we cannot have a better country. The pieces are now being put in place, but I have said the jury is still out whether we have improved since then. Frankly, I don't think so. Not yet. I'm waiting to see the anti-hopping bill and eventually probably the act or recall elections, whatever. And that seems to be the priority at the moment. You don't address this problem, you're going to have a lot of uncertainty. We're not talking about philosophy here, maybe I should add on this note. We're not talking about high academic things. We're talking about the reality of politics, about constitutional law being really applied structured politics. There are rules to comply with. Why do we have rules to comply with and principles to comply with? To ensure that the democratic system that we have chosen is viable and not perverted or eroded. This is what is happening now. That's why I worry. As a citizen, I worry about it. There is decay. There is erosion of the democratic system. Even if we do not have erosion, something like a direct act being done to destroy, we can have erosion of democracy. Slowly but surely is decayed, is eroded, and it decayed. decays. And what do we have at the end of the day? The sheer power grab. Again, a point made in the book.
All right, Tan Sri Ariff. On that note, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me again.
That was our conversation with former Speaker of Dewan Rakyat Tan Sri Ariff Yusof. And that wraps up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching, and good night.